So let's try and look into, the whole talk will be revolving around lower lumbar spine and hip internal rotation range. And I will try and go towards certain specific anatomy, a certain pathoanatomy, and with respect to the fast bowling, exactly at what happens. And that will be more to do with the experiences which we have in the last year and a half and 2 years. Plus, it will be backed with little bit of case scenarios with the MRI and CT discussions in the end. So let's get on to it. I'm going to be speaking about the anatomy of facet joint, arthrokinematics of the facet, which is the areas of the stress. There'll be pathomechanics of the stress fracture. There'll be also bowling phases, correlationship with those factors. And finally, as I said, it's going to be some case scenarios. So just look at the anatomy part of it. This is a vertebral body. There's a vertebral canal. In comparison to the thoracic spine, this is more broader, but more triangular. And the lamina and pedicle, they form the vertebral arch along with the spinous process. Now, two most important things, if I can speak right now, is please look at the articular pillars, which are superior articular pillar and inferior articular pillar. Now, very important point, if you can understand, is the superior articular pillars, they are concave and they are facing posteromedially. The inferior articular pillars are anterolateral and they are convex. So the whole interaction between the superior and inferior articular pillars are going to be the major reason why something which is a pars intra-articularis gets a very, very important factor here. And they together, the both superior and inferior articular pillars, they form a zygoepiphyseal joint. And it is basically a Greek word. It basically means, the physis means the bony outgrowths, and zygos is basically a bridging. So the bridging between the upper and lower segment is what is lumbar zygoepiphyseal joint represents. The biggest area of concern for us is your pars area. And why does it become stressful is because the whole articular pillar is embedded within the lamina itself. And between the superior and inferior articular surface is where your pedicle is placed. Any kind of kinematic, most importantly the kinetic involvement, all the lumbar joint motions right from the ground reaction forces to your ankle to knee to the hip is corresponding to that area. Any failure of the segments not being able to dissipate the forces is predisposes this area for more and more stress. So as I said, there is a little bit of a contouring which is concave, and then the inferior articular process is convex. Now, the moment the kinetic forces which is running in tandem is not being able to dissipate, this area starts to become more and more predisposed for the stresses, and then probably a unilateral stress fractures happens on the contralateral side of the fast bowlers. Undiagnosed, undetected, it can go on to the bilateral side. So the next few slides will be basically a thought process for you to start thinking about that. What do we think is the mechanics around it? Do we think it's excessive compression? Is it the excessive torsion? Is it the excessive movement, or is it the decreased core stability, which is primarily, according to us, is the reason why the stress fractures are happening? We would also like to think about which movement is creating the stress fractures. It is the lumbar side flexion. Is it the lumbar extension? Is it the lumbar rotation, or lumbar side flexion plus extension? And how does it get created? What is happening? Do we find any logic around here? When does it happen? At what stage of the bowling it happens? Does it happen in back foot contact? Does it happen in back foot contact to the front foot contact? Is it happening in the front foot contact, or is it happening from front foot contact to the follow through? So let's look into it. Let's say if you look at the general spinal segment, a vertebral column, when there is a flexion happening, on the anterior segment there is a compression because the spine is bending forward. There's a compression on the anterior segment. The posterior segment has got tension. That means just for the reference purpose, any time when the joint is getting approximated, there's a concept compression. Every time there's a distraction or there is a distance between the joint segment, there is a tension segment involved here. So think about pathomechanics, what is happening. There is the upslide of the inferior facet of the superior articular process. It goes into an anterior tilt and causes an anterior slide. That means there is more spacing happening around at this segment in lumbar flexion. Thinking about extension, now the whole thing changes into the posterior sides, both the segments are in compression. The anterior side has got tension. So what is the pathomechanics in this? There is now the inferior articular surface of the superior segment is, there is a downside of the inferior facet. That means it's sliding downwards. There is a posterior tilt and then there is a posterior slide. Now more and more approximation or joint interaction is happening between this segment in extension. So now there is a possibility of a pseudo joint axis which is creating repeatedly around that segment, which can be one of the precursor or a predisposition factor for this area to become more area prone for stress. Now think about left side flexion. On the left side, and now please, we have to also be mindful here that the motion in the lumbar spine, especially lumbar flexion, side flexion, is a combination of movement with rotation here. So now in the left side flexion, there is compression happening on the left side and there is tension happening on the other side. That means there is a lateral tilt. The inferior articular process of the superior segment is moving towards a concavity. There is a closing down of the segment here, and there is a convexity on the opposite side. That means there is an opening side of the opening of the segment on the opposite side. What's happening on the right side flexion? Exactly the opposite. There is compression on the right side, but there is tension on that, means opening of the opposite segment on the left side. So let's look into what is happening on this side. There is a right tilt. The inferior articular process is going towards a right slide. There is a more and more approximation towards the concavity, and then there is an opening of this thing on the left side. So now we have basic, this is just a way to show what is happening in flexion, extension, side flexion. Now possibilities of stress are quite high in this segment, considering there's also an element of rotation involved. That means more and more predisposition starts to happen in these two segments, where more repetitive movements can cause more predisposition for that area to go into fatigue. Now let's look into the combination of movement, extension plus side flexion. Now there is also one important biomechanics here, that while the side flexion can open up on the segment on the opposite side, the moment it is combined with one particular movement, either extension or flexion, there is now the thing changes. That means now in extension we have got what is happening with extension on the left side. There is compression of the posterior vertebral canal. There is on the anterior side there is tension plus some side of compression. On the posterior lateral side has got compression plus tension, and the front it is purely tension. That means it's moving towards extension and side flexion. So tension here, compression and tension here. So now extension on the right side flexion, exactly opposite. There is compression on the posterior side. There is compression plus tension on the left side. There is tension plus compression on the anterior right side, and there is tension purely on the left side because there is absolutely no movement happening around that region. Now let's look at what is happening in the rotation side now. There is obviously on the normal thing, there is opening of the facet on the side, and there's closing, opening of the facet on the right side rotation and closing on the left side. That means the moment I'm rotating on the right side, there is normally, it should be opening of the facet, and there should be closing on the facet on the opposite side. That means this area has got more space. There is more approximation of joint in this space. On the left side, on the right side rotation, now there is a right tilt, there is a right slide, there is a compression on this side and distraction on the right side. That means more space is created in the right and left, and there's more distraction and more compression happening on the left side. On the left side rotation, exactly opposite is happening on the opening of the facet on the left side and this closing of the facet on the right side. Now, this is where a little bit of situation changes. Let's say if we are into a fixed internal rotation range as a right arm bowler, if he's into this position, and if there is a hip internal rotation is restricted on that range, in that area, now the whole opening of the facet, what should happen, because of the closed kinematics movement in the lower segment and upper segment having open kinematic chain, there is a small pseudo axis which should be what is normally the rotation should be happening in the pelvis. There is a pseudo axis which starts to get created around the left lower lumbar segment. More and more repetition of that hip internal rotation range restriction at that range starts to predispose. This area starts to become closed and starts to be a very, very important factor where this area starts to become predisposed for a stress injury. And that's why classically a right arm fast bowler can continue to have a left side area as a predisposing factor or area of stress or area of stress fracture. Now that gets supplemented also with the kind of fracture line what you see. we are seeing with multiple fractures happening into a diagonal pattern. That means the forces are working like a pseudo-axis where the line is passing from here. If it's unilateral, if it's managed well, or it continues to keep getting worse, it can go to a diagonal pattern the opposite side. So now let's just look into the pathomechanics, getting back to that point, and then I'll take it towards the bowling mechanics side of it. So what is creating this pattern of stress fracture? According to us, as I said, it's a hypothesis generation, but backed upon by the cases what we're seeing, it is the excessive movement which is happening at that segment. The kinetic energy what is being supplemented is not being able to dissipate that around that segment. Hip and pelvis, which are the main precursors of rotation in that area, is restricted. A pseudo-axis which starts to get created and creates too much of movement at that region into a closed facet segment. That could be a very important factor for that area to start becoming more predisposed. Now, which movement is creating the stress fracture? According to us, it is the lumbar rotation, and a very important factor which comes into play is limited hip rotation on the left side. This is considering if it's a right arm bowler. How is this created now? So think about, let's say there is a limited hip internal rotation range of motion. There is rotation of pelvis and sacrum towards the trail side. This is where it is rotating. The rotation of lumbar starts to happen towards the lead side, and there's closing of the facet around this region on the lead side, and there's a pseudo-axis which gets created. The moment that pseudo-axis is creating, that means indirectly that's a kinetic energy which is going, not being able to get dissipated, more and more approximation starts to create a repetitive stress area. So, and when does it get created? According to us, as I said, based upon that theory, it is purely from forward, that means forward front foot contact till the follow-through area. So it is at this region where the bowler is getting more and more predisposed now, where maximum forces are also generated. So let's say there are 5 phases of bowling: the run-up phase, the take-off phase, the step length phase, the front foot contact phase, the front foot contact to follow through, and follow through. For the sake of this presentation, I've kept it for these 3 phases because that's where our mechanical patterns are established and understood. So what is happening in step length phase? It is something which is a phase between back foot contact and front foot contact. It is bowler's spine is slightly extended at the back foot contact. From back foot contact to the front foot, the hind leg or the trail leg is planted. It side flexes and then it rotates. And then from the leading leg is still in open kinematic chain. So there is a degree of freedom around at this region. Everything is happening in the back foot right now. Now what happens in front foot contact? There is an initiation of side flexion. And there's the initiation of lumbar rotation because, as I said, it's a combination of movement. The lumbar goes into the trail leg, lumbar is into slight extension. There is still some degree of facet joint mobility present there. But the moment it comes to front foot contact to follow through, which is the power phase, this is where your maximum tangential endpoint velocity is created. So the bowler is trying to bowl as fast as possible. Everything what he has done from delivery to the jumping to the landing to the back foot to the front foot, he is trying to create everything at this phase, at this stage. What is happening then? The lumbar spine is flexing. There's a lateral flexion and rotation. The angular velocity of these motions are peak. That means whatever is happening, while we have understood that the ground reaction forces are not anymore of detriment, but all the joint motions, what is happening, the kinetic energy within the joint itself, the forces what are creating, which is the movement, then it continues. Let's say if there's a restricted hip rotation, internal rotation range of motion, it can continue to keep impeding onto that area. And too much of movement, which is movement overflow, then causes stress at the pars interarticular region. So let's say if that's something which we are seeing more and more uniquely with all our fast bowlers across all the age groups. And I'll just quickly run through some 10 slides with some of our case presentations. So this is a right arm bowler. He had this incomplete acute fracture of the left side, which was on the healing phase. Started to bowl, he was doing pretty well, but then there's started to see a small stress reaction on the right side. But the most important factor was the stress fracture angle. A clear diagonal pattern which can be seen. A similar thing from the other person. There was a bilateral segment is seen. This was a fast bowler at the early stage, adolescent fast bowler who went on to become a spinner because he had bilateral stress fractures. In both the segments you can see, while it was chronic, but both the segment there was a diagonal pattern seen. This is yet another fast bowler. Now in this case, there was an element of bilateral chronic defect, both diagonal, but then there was also a level which was superior, a higher level, there was a fracture there, and again a diagonal pattern seen. We have this was an acute fracture for the first time, and then there was, this is taken in later stages, again a right arm bowler, and again an angle, you can see that. This is a premier fast bowler again with one side of the fracture segment. It was incomplete, it was chronic, it was present, but then it went on to lead on to the opposite side of the fracture. And again, a diagonal pattern which can be seen, and even the stress reaction, what we could see at a very early stage of the fracture also was in the diagonal pattern. This was a case of a fracture of a adolescent fast bowler who had a chronic unhealed fracture, but all the segments are again similar into the in the sequence of diagonal patterns. This is a left arm fast bowler, acute stress reaction or acute stress fracture, a pattern again diagonal in nature. This was an MRI of a this was a fast bowler again who had a bilateral sequence, right arm bowler, first had a left side, then he had a right side. This was again a little unique thing because he had a multiple levels of fracture. This is a chronic fracture, which is he had bilateral stress fracture in both the segments. And this is a last one where we had a young fast bowler again having a diagonal pattern of the fracture. So this is, as I said, it's a small attempt to make an hypothesis. So what we are trying to say, it's the excessive movement at the lumbar segment, which is one of the biggest reasons why we are getting predisposed to fractures. Why is it going from unilateral to the bilateral side? Lumbar rotation over a fixed hip internal rotation range is one of the major criteria which needs to be looked into future references with more research into it to understand is the fixed hip internal rotation itself is one of the major predictor or cause for this to happen. There's also a creation of pseudo-axis, which is causing this factor. From the front foot contact to the follow through is the most crucial phase of bowling where possibly maximum kinetic energy is created. The diagonal fracture angles are reflective of the axis. So probably now what we need to do is as we start to create those screening the moment we start to do those MRI screenings, we need to start looking at the angle of the axis also of the fracture. We know now that unilateral fracture segment is progressing towards the bilateral segments. And we constantly need to monitor and maintain the hip internal rotation range as a part of our preventive measure. Thank you so much.